Offloading a truckload of fresh fruit into the wilderness doesn't sound like the most environmentally friendly move, but two genius ecologists theorized that it just might save the planet. Just before the results of the daring plan were made public, however, one greedy corporation halted the life-changing experiment. Though when all seemed lost, one student set out to finish the scientist's work if he wasn't too late. Timothy Truer was a graduate student at Princeton University who had his eyes set on greatness. He was aiming for a PhD in ecology and evolutionary biology, but first he needed a research topic to further his studies. Over the summer of 2013, he developed a fascination with oranges and their power to impact our planet. Timothy heard about an environmental experiment led by husband and wife duo Daniel Jensen and Winnie Hall Walks. There wasn't much information on the subject aside from an exciting theory about composting the waste of orange peels and pulp. Eager to learn more, he reached out to the two ecologists, unaware he was about to make history. Timothy wasn't able to speak with Winnie, but early that summer, Daniel sat down to discuss the rather controversial experiment. The science behind it was sound, but matters became complex when an unwelcome party joined the conversation. Daniel recounted the story, starting with his and his wife's groundbreaking idea. Daniel and Winnie thought a lot about the fate of tropical forests, especially back in the late 90s. Both their careers led them to the Guanacaste Conservation Area in Costa Rica, where they worked as researchers and technical advisors. They saw that some parts of the protected forest were slowly dying, even with the heavy government protection. Something that had to be done, and fast. The couple proposed a daring solution: perhaps a massive amount of compost would bring the forest back from the brink. Since the method of composting wasn't a new idea in the slightest, Costa Rican authorities gave them clearance for the experiment without a second thought. The two geniuses even had a unique supplier to bring in the compost waste. In 1997, they struck a deal with juice company Del Oro. In exchange for free dumping of their waste, the company would give back the northern portion of the land they took from the Guanacaste Conservation Area. It was a brilliant deal. A year later, 12,000 tons of orange waste were dumped onto degraded land. Winnie and Daniel were thrilled, but then came bad news. A rival juice company, Tico Fruit, immediately reacted to the dumping with a lawsuit, arguing their competitors had defiled a national park. Since there was not enough scientific evidence backing up such Winnie and Daniel's experiment, it was early to make any calls. Really, Tico Fruit won the legal battle. For the next 15 years, the orange dumping site was neglected, until Timothy decided it was time to go back. Daniel's story of the unfinished experiment piqued Timothy's curiosity, especially when the young scientist learned that after all this time no one had really done a thorough evaluation. This was the research project that Timothy had been looking for. However, cracking the case wouldn't be so easy. Most people had completely forgotten about it. Timothy happened to be heading to Costa Rica for another research project, but he took the time visit the barren forests of the land, or, at least, he was led to believe they were barren. With little details on any changes, Timothy was only given one clue on how to find the orange dumping grounds. Daniel Jensen told Timothy that a very clear sign with bright yellow lettering by a dirt road that would direct him to the experiment site. When he arrived at the Guanacaste Conservation Area, he followed Daniel's directions. But after walking down the dirt road for so long, he realized he was lost. One detail did give him a hint of where to go, but his guess was a long shot. Walking down the dirt road, Timothy couldn't see any signs to direct him, but he did notice how different the opposing sides of the road were. One side was overflowing with lush plant life with the most vibrant shades of green, while the other side paled in color and size, with little vegetation to speak of. The question was, which side had the compost treatment? Timothy didn't have a ton of time on this trip to Costa Rica, but it wouldn't be his last. A week later, he returned and searched for the sign yet again, but still couldn't find it. Regardless, he recognized something special about the area. The flourishing greenery was all brand new, with several new species popping up. Desperate for an explanation, Timothy put a team together back at Princeton. Back at the Costa Rican forest, Timothy brought several of his colleagues with him, including Jonathan Choi, a senior studying ecology and evolutionary biology. The senior was stunned by the differences between the two parcels of land. "The sight was more impressive in person than I could have imagined," Jonathan said. "While I would walk over exposed rock and dead grass in the nearby fields, I'd have to climb through undergrowth and cut paths through walls of vines," he explained. Together, the team finally discovered the truth. While exploring the area, Timothy's team finally found the ever-elusive yellow sign, and even then they could have easily missed it. The sign was hidden behind a hefty amount of trees and vines that they had to tear down to properly read it. Its lettering confirmed that this was the orange dumping site from 1997. "It was so completely overgrown with trees and vines that I couldn't even see the 7-foot-long sign with bright yellow lettering marking the site that was only a few feet from the road," said Timothy. For the next 3 years, the team of ecologists studied the area, comparing the benefits of the orange compost on soil with the dried-up land just across the way. After analyzing the soil samples, one from the lush part of the forest, the other from the dying part, and also the different ecosystems, the team found that the orange compost did more than just help the forest grow. With richer soil and an even more diverse living environment, the oranges did more than anyone could imagine. Just by looking, the scientists could tell there was difference in growth, but after studying the samples, they saw that the orange peels and pulp had revived the soil tenfold. Not only did the vegetation grow back, but new trees that were even bigger than before thrived. One element of their discoveries would be monumental in the fight for Earth's future. Growing back forests is the goal, but what is the bigger picture? According to a 2016 study, this type of regrowth actually makes the forest stronger against climate change. Basically, researchers found that these forests absorb and store atmospheric carbon at roughly 11 times the rate of old-growth forests. In plain English, that means a clearer and safer atmosphere for us and the planet. Timothy's expedition revealed huge progress toward battling deforestation, but that wouldn't guarantee a long-term victory. The ecologists would need more companies to join in on proper waste management, but according to Timothy, that's a little easier said than done. "We don't want companies to go out there willy-nilly just dumping their waste all over the place, but if it's scientifically driven and restorationists are involved in addition to companies, this is something I think has really high potential," said Timothy. Professor of Ecology and Evolutionary Biology David Wilkove shared a similar sentiment. "Plenty of environmental problems are produced by companies," said the professor. "But an awful lot of those problems can be alleviated if the private sector and the environmental community work together. I'm confident we'll find many more opportunities to use the leftovers from industrial food production to bring back tropical forests. That's recycling at its best." In the end, all the research that the team put together was recorded into one paper, entitled "Low-Cost Agricultural Waste Accelerates Tropical Forest Regeneration." Princeton senior Jonathan Choi even turned the research project into his graduation thesis paper. It was a great opportunity for the whole team, but Timothy emphasizes how this could potentially impact other dying ecosystems.